Hello, everyone. So welcome to Nicolas winding Refn on byNWR. This session is not about Nicolas's career as a filmmaker, which is rather well known by many of you here. It's more about his work as a film curator, film presenter, and a kind of culture producer, if you like. This side of his life and career is perfectly demonstrated on this website by NWR.com. Like other websites, it has this menu, drop-down menu, pages and hyperlinks and things. But actually, it is more than just a website. Of course, it is centered around films, and it's currently hosting some 15 titles, if not more, and they are free to watch. They are available in many different subtitles, and it's more like a highway at night. There's not much visibility. Every time you turn the wheel, the headlights would reveal something new. It has a very subterranean nature, and it's like a cellar cinema, if you like. And it's not very easy to explain the website. He is here to explain it to you. But I thought before inviting Nicolas and his archivist, who's with us as well, Peter Conheim, we play a very brief clip from one of the films which is available on his website. It's a clip from a film called She-Man, a story of fixation from 1967. It's the first feature film by Bob Clark. So let's see the very short clip, and then we are going to have our guests on the stage. Thank you. Nicolas winding Refn. Hello.
Hello, Ehsan.
Nicolas.
Good morning.
Morning to you. So, we just saw a clip from one of your films on the website. So, do you want to tell us more about byNWR after you've taken the picture?
Okay, everyone.
Smile.
Oh, that's a great idea.
So, a few years ago, I was bored one night, which is a very dangerous situation to be in. And my wife had gone to bed, and my kids had gone to bed, and I was sitting all alone. And I get an email from someone who says, there is a company in Seattle that is selling their private collection of movies. And I'm not like a walking encyclopedia of films. I don't really know a lot about films, but this idea of being bored one night and getting a long list of titles of films, negatives that I could buy was very entertaining. So, without telling my wife, I was able to buy a lot of films with the help of a writer called Jimmy McDonough, who is an American biographer who had worked on Times Square and had kind of lived through that 70s American pop culture of cinema in what it's called the Deuce. And this company that was selling their inventory had predominantly collected this kind of cinema over many years. So we went through the list together, and very quickly we came out with about 200 titles. And great, it was so much fun to buy and do deals and close deals and sign contracts. The problem was when I was done buying them, it was a bit like, fuck, what do I do now? Because all the material was stuck in Seattle and I was in Copenhagen. I was like, so anyway, I go off and I make the Neon Demon, and I've been spending a lot of time in the U.S. making the movie and so forth, and I'm kind of thinking about what I should do with this collection that I had purchased. And in that time, that's when, the whole idea of streaming really became like a new form of canvas, in my opinion. It was a time that Netflix had really created a new formula with this instant access and producing content that you can literally stream all at once, which in a way was a very revolutionizing and provocative way to view entertainment. And so suddenly streaming was becoming a real opportunity. And so I met Peter Conheim, who is a bit of a legendary archivist as well as a restorationist, and well as a musician and a sound engineer, creator, and other many things. And I hired him to basically oversee the collection, just because I needed someone to figure out how to preserve all this material. And we were able to place it in the Academy in LA, so I didn't have to ship it to Denmark and all these things, which was going to hundreds of thousands of dollars probably. So now we had the collection kind of settled, and it kept on growing also, because Peter was like, we should get this, we should get that, and he was out looking for more material. And that's when I came up with this idea. With all this stuff we've collected, I want to make my own streaming service. But I didn't want you make like just a streaming service, because there's so many of them. And I didn't want to make a political site or a lifestyle site or an architectural site or a photography site or a gossip site or a lifestyle site. I wanted to create everything in one. It was to become like a cultural hub, an expressway for the arts. And together with Peter, who was going to run the archival division, Jimmy McDonough, who was going to run editorial, and a company in London called All City, which is a design company, and another company in London called Bureau, which is a brand management. All of us together was there to create byNWR, which was going to be a combination of everything that the digital revolution could offer. But the manifest that I kind of, the first piece of the 10 Commandments within the company was that byNWR was going to be free. Because free is the ultimate punk rock attitude. I did not expect that, but that's great. So, I use my children as inspiration a lot to see how they use entertainment and how incredibly... I love social media. I mean, I'm a huge, advocate for anything digital and social media. And I mean, of course, we take the phones away from our kids, and I'm the devil, but I think it's the most beautiful invention. Now, that was kind of the foundation. And we started last year in August, was it? We launched for the first time?
September.
September.
Yeah.
So the first volume launched September last year. And it was quite an interesting odyssey because suddenly we just appeared. And I had very clear conceptual visions of how this would grow. And it was all going to be through word of mouth. And by October, we had an incredible opportunity from the Fondazione Prada in Milan to come and present the website at their museum, because part of byNWR is a museum. It's a digital museum with cultural artifacts where movies are inspirations for all other forms of art. From then on, we have grown and have been doing curated events around France, and now we're a little bit here. We'll be going Germany, Mumbai, India, and so forth. So that part of the site continues to grow. We have now done a French version. We'll be doing an Italian because I love Italy. Then we'll do a German, Spanish, Japan, and Chinese, because it is a movement. And recently, I've decided that from now on, byNWR will be my future producing entity. So we'll be no longer just curating and preserving, we'll also producing the future. So I will encourage you to sign up for byNWR because it's the ultimate punk rock. It's byNWR.com. And that's basically the foundation for it.
Thank you. Some of the questions I'm going to ask, you have explained hundreds of times, but I guess that, for someone who encounters the website for the first time, there are certain questions popping up. One that I have heard quite often is, what is this? What is this about? It's difficult to browse. Where does it start? Where does it end? So I can give you an example. I did it last week.
I have a great answer to that. But
you do? Okay. For instance, volume 6, I landed on a page, homepage, volume 5. Okay, what is volume 5? Volume 5 of what? And then I discovered there is a volume 6 of coming attractions. You ain't no punk, you punk. And I said, what is that? Is it coming or it's there? So it was not very clear, but is it part of the design, that ambiguity in that sense of,
Yes. byNWR is like having sex. You have to discover it, and there is nothing that's wrong, and all sex is good sex. There is an enormous amount of lazy behavior in the digital revolution. There's an enormous amount of stupidity and arrogance towards the audience, because for now, the digital revolution is mostly just about sharing information, sharing opinions. Well, we have to remember the digital revolution is no more than 20 years old. It's an infant stage. It's just the beginning, and so forth. So the way that design-wise, conceptually was that I wanted it to become like an enigma, and like a Rubik's Cube, like a Alice in Wonderland. So you would drop in, and then you can go left, right, up, down, and you could discover rooms like you would do in a museum. You would continue to grow and grow. Where like a museum, has limitations because of its space, the digital revolution is endless. So that idea of just, unleashing it, and it's really up to people's own curiosity or desire to investigate is a way to respect the person and say, I'm offering this to you as an exchange for your time, but I will not necessarily explain it to you, because then what's the point of doing it? So there is certainly a foundation in that. From an overall approach, it's set up with guest editors every quarter, which means that every quarter the website reinvents itself because the guest editor creates new content. So it never repeats itself, and therefore it always renews itself.
Right. And I imagine there are very clear ideas about the type of movies you want to have out there. If someone offers you, let's say, Citizen Kane for free, would you be interested in hosting it by NWR?
I will defer to Peter Conheim on all those. I kind of let the divisions kind of run their own ways, you know. So if Citizen Kane, you know, was around, sure, I guess if we could own it, you know, because we're not distributors. We collect content and then we exchange it for your time. So we have a different and more sophisticated way of monetizing the future.
But how do you finance it?
Up until now, I've been financing it myself because I would rather create it first to show what the future will look like than, you know, try to go to the traditional investor route where a lot of people are interested, but the minute that I mentioned the word free, they went like... And I said, well, it's actually a reality because the digital revolution is essentially free. It's a free forum, like free information. What we have to figure out is how do you make it into a business? How do you monetize this new currency called free? And that was the experiment. But the enormous growth of the site obviously proves that there is an opportunity that is quite unique, because there's nothing like byNWR.
Sure about that. So, Peter, what do you do exactly for this project? What is your contribution to byNWR?
Well, I'm the guy that, among other things, I do all of the preparation and archival material. I do all the preparation for all the content that goes on the site. So I'm the person, I wear a lot of different hats, but the main hat is that every film that is chosen for the site, and of course, as Nick said, I'm one of the people that chooses the films that goes onto the site. I'm the guy that coordinates the restoration, the careful restoration of each film, because we do a complete top to bottom restoration of each film that goes on to the site. So I'm the person that's choosing the best materials to be used. And as Nick said, we've been pulling from this big collection that he has. But we've also, as he said, we've sought out new materials. So I coordinate all this stuff, and I also do all the sound, most of the sound work myself on the site. All of the remastering and reprocessing of the sound that you hear on the site comes through me. That includes the film. And it should also be mentioned that the site is not just films, but of course it's also music. We film live performances. We film, in fact, we have some non-musical performance that's coming in the new volume, which is really exciting. I don't want to give it away. So we go out and actually create new content, and I record live sound for that. So there's all kinds of stuff that I do within it. And then, of course, as I said, I'm also on the curatorial team, too. So it's a very small group of us all working together to really, you know, push this thing through.
Right. Yeah. So the films that I have seen on the website so far, they were all Americans. Do you have any plans for going beyond America in terms of other different types of national cinemas in different countries being presented on the website?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, ambitions-wise, it's because of the speed of its growth. We're starting to move into European countries and Asian countries, Middle Eastern countries, trying to, find material. But, not to speak on behalf of Peter and his team, but what I believe we're interested in is not so much what is already there, but it's all the things that are forgotten, artifacts that, in a way, needs to be rediscovered, creativity that maybe didn't get its recognition, or the idea that film or music or literature can be something else than what we expect it to be. The important part of all the assets on the site is that it has some historical significance at the same time that it's entertaining. Right. So it's about preserving the past and introducing it to the future. And since we're getting so active in producing original content now, as well as my own movies and television shows or streaming shows, it's a constant moving beast that keeps on reinventing itself. Like Peter's saying, we started from me buying a lot of films one night because I was bored, to suddenly 2 years later, 3 years later, we're sitting here on this constant evolution of what we've been creating.
And then specifically, to your question about other countries, we probably don't want to tip our hat too much, but it's already known that we restored the first two films of the masked wrestler El Santo from Mexico, and those two films are they're in rotation and eventually will wind up on the site. We're not going to reveal exactly what the plan is yet, but those are in the pipeline. And then we have these amazing films from Iran, which we're working on. So, yeah, there's always going to be more coming.
Is there anything, Nick, this is a question for you, is there any film that or any films by a certain filmmaker that you want to have on the website? You want it badly and you cannot get it, or it's hard to get or hard to track down the original material?
I don't look at it as, it's not my personal space. It's more of an identity that's for everyone else. So it's really more about you guys than about my personal thing. It's really more about the team and, of course, the members and the users of what they would like to do and what they would like to see. And we're even having people that's starting to send us material that, they find in their attics or in their basements that, is quite interesting. So it's becoming more like a social movement in a way. And I always say, look, I have my personal taste, but this is really more the identity of what the site is. I think the only criteria, in my opinion, is that whatever is there has to have a point of view.
Right.
It's always about one singular creative control. Whether it's music or literature or films, it has to be about someone's point of view, because that is what creativity is. Creativity is not committee making. That is a financial investment. And some of those things can be entertaining, like entertaining eating junk food. But like fine dining, you need a point of view. And that, to me, is the most important thing, especially because nowadays, because we don't even teach culture anymore, which is such a shame, because culture is essentially what binds us together, our souls. We all drink water and have to eat. But what our souls are married to is creativity. That's how we exchange borders and how we exchange religion and sex and so forth, is through culture. And unfortunately, we don't teach it in ways that I think it should be taught. My opinion is something we have from when we're in kindergarten, I think art is as important as reading and writing, even more in a way, because you can just Google reading and writing. And also, culture is going to be the last part of the human mind the AI cannot create. The AI can duplicate creativity, but it can never create creativity, in my opinion, because creativity is based on the human soul. It's based on your weaknesses, on your desires, on your internal struggles. And, until now, I believe the AI doesn't have a soul yet. So creativity is going to be one of the last parts of us that distinguishes the human mind from the machine, because what they say in 20 years, 40% of the workforce will be gone. So again, creativity is going to become one of the last elements that we human beings can reclaim us, before the Terminators come and kill us.
So does it make any difference to you emotionally and intellectually if, let's say, your film Drive, being a screen in Piazza Maggiore in front of 6,000-7,000 people, or I watch it on my phone?
Seeing 6,000 people Friday night was like super cool. And meeting those lovely Italian women on stage. But at the same time, you have to accept the evolution. And like my eldest daughter, who's 16, would rather jump out of a building than watch a movie in a cinema. It's the reality. But she'll stream it either on her iPad or she'll watch clips on her phone. And what's great about the digital revolution is that it's no longer a regulated force like television used to be or the cinema. And I love cinema, don't get me wrong, but it's just a flow that we connect in and out of. You all have your phones, and you can go in and out of your social activities, your entertainment activities. So that means that our understanding how to view entertainment is going to be different. So when I decided to make my first streaming show, Too Old to Die Young, I was like, I'm not going to make a television show because I don't even watch television. But the idea of making a 13-hour movie that people can just click on and click off whenever they feel like it is very intriguing to me, because that's one of the opportunities that this new canvas called streaming can provide for us. So you, in a sense, have to understand when you make something, you have to make it accessible to the smallest stamp screen on your little iPad or iWatch, whatever it's called, to the biggest stadium-sized screen of like what we had on Friday or at Cannes or whatever, the biggest screens are in the world. And you have to make it work for all avenues because there's no longer only one. And that is, of course, a creative challenge, but that's what makes it fun, because let me be quite honest with you. Creativity is all about the process. The result of a creative, whatever you end up doing, is what I call dead space. It's all about the ego and the vanity and the recognition and the acceptance and the money and all those things. But you can't take those with you because they're not important. What is important is the process. Creativity is when you make it, because that's where you are alive. The other, when it's done, it's just whatever. And that's why we call it the product blues. So whenever you create something, we all get really depressed. And I sit on the internet and I'm really depressed. And I start buying shit because when you're depressed, you spend money, So it's an unhealthy situation. But for anyone who works in creativity or wants to be in creativity, just remember this. The only thing you have to make up your mind about is that you have to do it your way. Because that's the one and single element that can never be taken away from you. It's your identity. It's your human soul. And then whatever you end up doing, remember, it's not about the result, because it's just there. But it's the process that makes you alive, and those are the memories, at the end of the day, that's going to go through your mind those few seconds before you die.
we have many people here, and I'm sure some of them have some questions to ask. Do you mind if you open the session to the floor for some questions, Nicolas?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Let's talk politics.
Okay.
How many voted for the EU? Raise your hands. All right. We got to vote.
I win.
Okay.
Okay. Sorry for my English. What's the things that inspired your aesthetic vision that's growing up movie by movie?
Well, I don't know how to answer that because I've made a conscious decision of never asking why I do what I do. Obviously, it's driven by something that is within me, but I don't understand it, and nor do I want to understand it. I mean, I had a very healthy upbringing. I had a mother who said I was a genius every day. Still does, with sincerity. And I remember she always comes to Cannes when I'm in Cannes, and she went to the screening of Too Old to Die Young in Cannes. And she saw that, again, the polarized reaction. And don't forget, polarization is success. It is the sole success. Because everyone liking something is the equivalent to everyone hating it. But polarization means that you have individually touched people and you have penetrated their brain and violated their thoughts, and now they have something to discuss. That means you've made a difference. We live in a society that is obsessed with being liked, obsessed with being polite, obsessed with being successful, because we live with this artificial reality through our social media, which is maybe one of the problems with it. But creativity is not about being nice. Remember, you're not politicians. You're not there to ask for anyone's vote. You're not there to be liked. But you're there to force your point of view on the world. And to do that, you have to have megalomania, narcissism, self-indulgent, arrogance, and you have to believe you're the center of the universe, because that is the DNA of creativity, exhibitionism. So when all those people criticize for those exact things, usually the establishment, we all exploded because one of the things with the internet is just all accessible. There is no longer a gatekeeper that can tell you what's good or bad. I mean, there's something for everyone. It's like sex. But polarization, just remember that. Do it your way and you will polarize. So that's my best way to answer your question.
Questions, folks? The lady, second row. Second row, Eleonora.
Hi, Nicolas. I'm studying film producing, and here in Italy, a film can be partly state-funded, the state financing the film partially. And how does it work in Denmark? And is more difficult for you and the kind of movie that you make? Raising fund in Europe or like in Hollywood in America? Thank you.
Okay, so let's do that question in English.
She's studying production, and she wants to know whether it's easier to fund films in Europe or it's easier to do it in America. Oh. Your projects, your experience.
In my experience, it's not easy anywhere. So what I do is that I promise, I steal, I lie, I pretend, but it's true. But to understand, if we're talking about movies, to understand movies, you have to understand money. Because money is the true power. And a way that I have always done it is you ask for less, because the less money you ask for, the less people are going to involve themselves, the less pressure there is on you, the less the less kind of suspicion there is on you, and the more control you have. And then it's up to you to take control, because no one's ever going to give you control. You have to take it. You have to manipulate control. So, do what you have to do. There's no rules in financing creativity, and you can be as ruthless as you want to be.
Questions? Let's go to the. Well, is there someone? Is there at the back, in the middle? You see? I don't know. Okay.
Hi. Because of your upcoming appearance in Death Stranding, I was wondering what your opinion is on video games and how / if you see them fitting into byNWR.
Well, I love any creative endeavor, and I think video games is, of course, another outlet of opportunity. Just like VR and all these new inventions that comes with digital revolution that is such still early stages. I'm friends with Hideo or Kojima, and we did a swap where I was in his game and he's in Too Old to Die Young. But for my personal gaming experience, I have the mini Pac-Man that my wife bought me, and that's as far as it goes because I get very dizzy otherwise. So, but it's certainly something that I would love to be part of. And in terms of the site, yes, we've already discussed the idea of how to move into that division as well as VR, and we're already planning VR stages now.
Questions? The gentleman second row here.
How can I have a good taste of music of yours, just like yours? Because
how can you develop a good taste in music, like your taste in music?
Because your soundtrack in every movie is amazing.
Thank you very much. That's very kind of you. My wife is not really happy with my taste in music, but she loves Cliff Martinez, who does all the music. I can't play a note. I don't know how to play music, but I love music, and I love all kinds of music. So it's just, what speaks to you, essentially, and hopefully it will speak to other people as well. Again, you can only have your own point of view.
The gentleman in the front row raised his hand twice, so I think it's his turn.
Thanks.
That's a cool T-shirt, brother.
Yeah, I know. We are fans of the works of Hideo Kojima. And my name is Federico, and I want to be a filmmaker like you. I love your movies. My favorite film of yours is Only God Forgives, because Ryan Gosling was amazing. And the soundtrack and the fight scenes, I love that. My father too. You're a great fan, and my friend here.
I love your family, man.
Yes.
You're a great family.
No, we have a lot of things of you, but you are the creator, you are the director. What about working with Hideo Kojima? Is something different, or you are near your usual work you do for movies? Is something different, or is it equal?
Well, Hideo and I have been actually friends for a number of years now, and we usually travel to different places, and then we meet up and have dinner, and we talk about everything else but our work. But I visited his studio in Japan, of course, and it was very fascinating to see how the evolution and how he controls it, and the mind that he has. He has this incredibly mind of just visions and ideas and politics and philosophy. So it's like, how much sushi do you need to eat to get that intelligent? And then, he came to our sets in Los Angeles when I was shooting Too Old to Die Young, and he was, walking around looking at what I was doing. And and then he was in the show as well. So it's more like a kind of a mutual partnership. We haven't talked directly what the future will be, but there will be a future.
Okay, so you have some questions here. Maybe we start with the third row. Yes, here.
Cinema, until the digital era, I would say, has always been, talking about the experience of cinema, it's always been very clear. So, a big screen, a dark hall, a collective vision, and everybody could experience it. Now, like you said, in the digital era, it's much more flexible. You can see it on a smartphone, on a computer, on an iPad, on a big screen. And so, now, seeing that the experience has changed, how would you define cinema now in the new digital age?
Okay. We're going to make a little game. Two years ago, I was in Lyon, which is the origin of the Lumiere brothers, and, who invented film. And I declared cinema to be dead. So today in Bologna, because of the heritage that the Bologna Cinematheque has and its importance globally to film, cinema, preservation, and so forth, we're going to again declare the death of cinema. So today, cinema has died. So now we will spend 10 seconds remembering cinema. Now, 10 seconds later, as of today, I declare cinema to be reborn.
Hi. I saw the whole series Too Old to Die Young, and in this product you do an important work on the storytelling, the very expanded storytelling, and I would to know which is the ultimate experience, the ultimate thing, the most important difference for you to work on this new form of storytelling, or the difference between this new form to the work of the other films. And I was also curious, how did this project started? Because I saw it's co-created with Ed Brubaker, that he usually worked on comics.
Well, How Too Old to Die Young was created and started, you can read online. It's a very long story. But I created the show about 3 years ago, and then I brought in Ed Brubaker to work with me on it, who was a very good friend of mine and a wonderful writer. But in terms of the difference between streaming and movies, like everything else, it's about time. In a movie, I'll have an hour to 2 hours of time. And here, with streaming and Amazon allowing me freedom, I had an endless amount of time. I just ran out of money. If I had had more money, I would still be shooting. And it would have been 20 hours. So it's this thing that we're so used to living in a structural form of society where time dictates our abilities. But streaming is the complete opposite because we control timing. Because it's no longer certain specific length or places we have to coordinate our time with. It's the exact opposite. So in a way, it's timeless. And that was very interesting to experience. And if they had given me more money, I would have made it longer.
Okay, I have a question myself too. So, I can ask it. Do you have any questions? Okay. The lady, third row here.
Hi, I was wondering if there were any films that you weren't able to put on the website because the condition of the material was too far gone and restoration just couldn't happen.
Peter?
It's funny that you should
Keep it short.
It's funny that you should bring that up because we're actually working on one right now that is so bad that it's right on the line. We haven't actually rejected anything for the sake of it can't be done. But we have one that it's the rarest.
You mean technically? Do you mean in terms of technically or the movie itself?
Technically, as in you can't scan it.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Yeah.
We have one that physically there's this color distortion in it that we tried to correct digitally, and we're still working on it. And it'll be a miracle when it's done, but we will have done a true miracle job on this. But so far, we've never actually been defeated. Let's put it that way. We've done some miracle work so far. No actual defeats.
And I mean, to that point, you should probably also talk a little bit your partner Ross, who kind of works with you.
Yeah, Ross Lipman, amazing colorist, restorationist who worked at the UCLA Film and Television Archive for 18 years, oversees all the color work for all of our projects, and he's the guy that sort of gives you the look that all of the restorations have. And he was invaluable on this project too, but this particular one eluded even him. The film's called Walk the Walk, and it's going to be in our You Ain't No Punk, You Punk series. And you will see that the color on it and the distortion in the color is like nothing that anybody in our team has ever had to deal with before. It was found in a lab after being lost for almost 50 years. And it had been left in a bad condition. And it was left in a bad condition.
But in terms of also depends on what lab they work with. We have been fortunate to work with the Bologna lab, obviously. And we also work with the French lab. So it's also it's everyone's equally important in the process. If you come here in Bologna, it's like you're walking into like a Dario Argento movie with all these alchemies and stuff that they're doing to preserve whatever they do in these film jars. I don't really understand it. And in terms of the actual, there has been one thing that was sent to us that was a project that was made by a group of very famous artists. And we know that it only exists in this one 8mm copy. And when it was seen by the team, it was the only time that it was like, this is such a cultural artifact. This is of such importance culturally, and its value is, you can't even really put a number on it because it's unique, but it is simply impossible to show. So that just went into the archive, and it's basically labeled, must never be opened.
And this was for content reasons.
Pure content.
Okay, maybe gentleman sitting there, fourth or fifth row.
Hi. I used to work for a film archive, so I'm very curious about your restoration work because I know restoration is so expensive. If this website is for free, I'm curious about how are you going to sustain this website in long term?
Well, that is the $1 million question. But I believe that, like everything, you have to build it first and then figure out how to make it work. It doesn't work the other way around. And we are at a stage in the digital revolution where we have come to the reality that the old model is just not sustainable. And I know that there are, companies that come to this festival that work in the traditional business model of, distribution that is either monetized by subscription or purchase of physical material, or maybe they use some kind of advertising substitute. But the reality is that business model for a younger audience, for people like my kids, is not really that feasible anymore. So, the entertainment industry, you have to remember, is still enormously conservative. And they cling to an old business model that we all know. But the reality is that I'm sure a lot of these young people sitting in this room has not paid for entertainment for a very, very long time. Am I right? No.
Or maybe the majority of your entertainment you don't pay for?
My cousins have never paid for anything they have on their phones. So that's the reality. And instead of ignoring it, which a lot of people do, and they try to find all these different ways of, this or they do that, I look at the sales figures. I see the numbers because I'm also, I still make stuff, so I know what the value is. And things have just so radically changed. The bigger streaming companies have really changed the system, and the global corporations have also devalued entertainment to free giveaways. So, the only way to reinvent everything is to go back to square one, which was that, like the Lumiere brothers, shoot a fucking train and project it for free and see what this can become.
Time for one last question. And don't forget that we are playing El Topo tonight, which is going to be introduced by Nicolas. So you have another chance of...
Oh yeah, if you haven't seen El Topo, it's an absolute unique experience. And it's a very inspiring film because it's one of the rare examples of artists turning to film and literally doing it their way, all the way. And so I would highly recommend you come and see it. And I think it's like a 4K, 6K, whatever, 9K?
It's 10K.
10K, whatever.
Punk rock.
Call it just 10K, sounds better.
Okay, one last question. The smiling...
There's a woman in front that really wants to ask a question.
Hi, I'm Karia, and I want to ask you how you get the inspiration for the idea of the neon demon?
In every man, there's a 16-year-old girl hiding. You know what I'm talking about. And so the neon demon was my way of exercising my 16-year-old girl. At the same time, we live in a society that is so obsessed by beauty and age that, it's almost going to essentially recycle itself because youth becomes younger and younger in how we prey upon it. So obviously in the end, beauty and youth will devour itself like a cycle. It becomes just like a yin-yang cycle. And, at the same time, I was one day looking in the mirror and I realized, you know what? I was never born beautiful. And I was really sad, but I have a wife who's very beautiful. I have very beautiful children. I thought, God, I wonder what it'd be like to be beautiful. And so that gave me the inspiration to do the Neon Demon.
Thank you, Nicolas. One last round of promotion for the website before we say goodbye to our friends.
Well, again, I all encourage you, log on. It's byNWR.com. It's a free sign-up. Within the next volume 6, that's going to be running in September, we actually will be opening the gate, so when you use the content, you no longer have to be a member. The membership will only be in the archival departments, meaning if you want to go back and look at all the amazing volumes that's been created up until now, look at some of Peter's amazing work, see all the and hear all the music, read all the essays, articles, documentaries, and so forth, and other cultural artifacts. But again, when you join up, remember, you're not just signing up for some site, you're signing up to a movement that is meant to be the provocateur, but also something that's going to show what the future can essentially do for you. And it has a philosophy that creativity is for everyone, and you all have creative abilities, and you should never listen to anyone who says you cannot do it. Just remember what your mother said to you, you're a born genius.
Thank you very much.